guys doing? I'm Kent Tilley. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk to anybody that's in their 50s and some of the things that you should consider, because now is the time to really sort of get serious about developing your long-term financial plan, including your retirement plan. I think it's the most important for really getting everything in order in your 50s, because then you can start to really prepare. You have a better idea of, what your life is probably going to look like. So you can really have an understanding of what's happening in your life and what your retirement might look like. Obviously, the most important thing when you're younger is to just start saving and get that building up, because then sort of the sky's the limit with your options. Makes it so much easier to hit whatever your future goals might be. So I do think it's really important in your 50s to really get this established, and that's where a financial planner should come into play. So, I mean, in my opinion, once you're in your 50s, you're sort of set in your career. In most cases, you have an idea, you've sort of bought the things that you want and need, and now you have an idea of what your life is going to look like, with the exception of the fact that your kids are now probably like 20 years old, and they're going to cost you an absolute fortune for the rest of your life. And that's actually pretty hard to figure out, what are they going to cost us going forward? How long do we have to delay retirement so they can actually not live in a rental property for the rest of their life? So what I would first start with is really establishing your goals. I know you've thought about this from time to time, but most people, when I ask them, aren't like, they're like, I've never actually written this down or thought about it. So say, when do you want to retire? What do you want your retirement to look like? How much money would you like to be able to spend after tax on a monthly basis throughout retirement, based on just the way that you want to live? Also understanding that each decade in retirement is going to be different, and not particular. It's not like you hit 70 and that changes, but in your 60s and early 70s, you're probably spending a little bit more, traveling a little bit more, still going out and golfing and doing these things with your friends. And then you start to slow down. And most people, after about 75 or whatever, start to spend a lot less. You're spending a lot more time at home. It's kind of like the COVID times when we were just stuck in our house, going for walks, not really spending that much money on anything. And the only thing that you really need to think about for increased costs is the potential for long-term care or an illness or a prolonged stay, and a long-term care home that can really eat into the budget. So think about what you would want to happen if you got sick and there was the choice. Would you want to sell your house and go into long-term care? Do you want insurance to potentially cover that? Do you want to stay in your home and pay for that out of your savings? So you've established your goals, and now you have to realistically think about what your longevity probably is. I know that we don't have the answer to this, but in your 50s, you've got a family history. You've also, have sort of an idea of your general health. So you can say, based on this is kind of what I think I'm going to live to. And then what I would do, actually, the next thing that I would do is I would take a look at your budget and say, okay, how much money are we bringing in? How much do we want to spend? How much is in excess? How does our debt look? Are we debt free? Do we have a mortgage that's not going to be paid off by the time that we want to retire? Are we still going to have debt by the time we retire? And if that's the case, then I really want you to set a goal in mind to be paying this debt off by the time you retire. I've done a video on it before where I said one of the biggest mistakes that people make in their 50s is that they go out and they buy that, maximum level home that they want for their their dream house in their 50s on a 25-year amortization on their mortgage, and they do that when they're 50. That means if they retire at 65, they're still going to have these big mortgage payments from 65 to 75, which can significantly derail your retirement plan. Sorry, a bit of a cold going around this house. So look at the debt. Make sure that you have the ability to either fund that with sources in retirement, and if you don't, then you really need to make sure that you've paid all of that off by the time that you retire. So that's where I would come into what are your sources of income going to be in retirement. And there could be multiple sources of income. First and foremost, you're going to have CPP and OAS. We're going to know exactly what OAS is going to be at 65, or if you take it at later at 66 or 70, based on how long you've been in Canada. But CPP is different because it's based on how much you've contributed to it over the years. So we are going to be able to get a pretty accurate estimate of what your CPP and what your spouse's CPP is going to pay. Then you might have a pension. You should hopefully have some RSPs or TFSAs saved up, maybe a non-registered account, maybe a rental property or two. Maybe you've got some other assets that you plan to sell by the time that you retire. And a lot of other people take in potential future inheritances into account in their retirement plan. It's not something that I love to do because we don't know exactly what that's going to be, unless you know it's like a year away or something like that. We don't know when that's going to happen. Obviously, some people know they're going to get something, but we shouldn't totally use it as your retirement plan because that could potentially seriously fail. And then a lot of people might want to just work part-time. They'll get bored in retirement, so they say, okay, maybe I'm going to have part-time income from 65 until 75 as long as I'm healthy. So you've got all of these, and you say, okay, well, I know what we want. Are those going to add up to what we want based on the trajectory that we're going on? And if they're not, then what you're going to need to do is start a new, maybe more aggressive saving or investment plan to say maybe we need to take more risk with our investments to hopefully get higher returns over the next 10 or 15 years, or maybe we need to save more money. And this is when you can work with a planner to say, okay, well, we also know that by contributing to this and saving taxes or contributing to this, that this is how we can structure your income coming out in retirement. And by sort of pre-planning that in your 50s, it can make an absolutely massive difference by decreasing your taxes in retirement by setting your accounts up properly with time to spare. Another thing that you'd probably want to do in your 50s, if you haven't already done this, is update your will. Now you have maybe close to grown or grown children. You might want to change your executor to one of them because it might have been a friend or somebody older than you when you first set it up. Now you don't need guardians for your children anymore. You don't need to have sort of a setup where it says, okay, well, they're only going to get this money when they're 21 and 25. Now you have a better idea of what your assets are, so you could say, this is how we want to split them up. This is how we want to set it up. This is who we want to take care of it if both of us pass away, or if you're single and you pass away, and this is how we want everything to work. You also need to set up a personal directive and a power of attorney. So let's say you're incapacitated, now you need somebody to be able to manage your accounts, or do things that you would want even because you can no longer speak for yourself. So it's very important to get those 3 documents set up with a qualified lawyer that actually deals with estate planning. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is risk management. And this is sort of a difficult subject to discuss when you're in your 50s because it can be cost prohibitive. However, what if something happens to you and all of a sudden this is going to completely derail your retirement plan? So if there's an illness or there's an injury or there's a premature death, what would happen? And if your plan is going to fail if one of those things happen, then you need to consider getting some sort of insurance in place to cover just in case one of those things happen. You probably don't need insurance for that long, so hopefully you're still insurable based on your age, and it can sort of fit within the budget as long as you're talking to an insurance agent that's not trying to sell you gold-plated insurance policies just because you've got some money. All you really need to do when you're protecting for the retirement and sort of build-up phase is just make sure it's there for that phase. If you want to add in some other stuff for estate planning purposes, then I would definitely consider that, but that's a whole different conversation. So after you've had all of these questions and discussions with yourself, this is when you reach out to a certified financial planner and you say, I want a financial plan that encompasses every single one of these things. And for some people, it might be a lot simpler than this, but everything should at least be looked at. And that's when you can go through a whole bunch of the structure, the things that you need to do to protect yourself, the things that you need to worry about, the things that you need to get done so your estate plan is in order, and how much you need to save and into which accounts so that you can achieve your goals. Because at the end of the day, this business, we kind of make money off of the investment side, but at the end of the day, it is sort of the simplest part of it. Everybody is kind of getting the same returns as long as they're in the same sort of risk associated funds with one another. They all work together, tracking together, and everybody says that they're selling the absolute best thing. But truth be told, we just don't know who's going to outperform who on a day-to-day or year-to-year basis. And if we did, every single one of us would choose the one that was going to win because that's better for us and that's better for our clients. So unfortunately, we don't have that crystal ball, but what we can do is set up a plan that has the least probability of failing, the highest probability of success. And I think it's worth your time to actually go through this process and really sit down with a financial planner and say, okay, this is what I've got, this is what we want, how can we make this work, and what are some of the things that we've overlooked. So I think that's pretty much it. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, and it's totally situationally dependent, but if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you'd like us to potentially work with you, or you want to give us a shot, feel free to reach out to us at any time, info@k4financial.ca. We'd be happy to chat with you and see if we're a good fit and if we can help you out. See you soon.